Good day, everyone. Today, we explore one of the most central themes in Platonic philosophy, the relationship between virtue and knowledge, and how this connection serves as the path to eudaimonia, or human flourishing. As we dive into this concept, I highly recommend engaging with the critical dialogues that form the foundation of this discussion, the Republic and Meno, especially where Plato outlines the role of virtue in achieving a well-ordered soul. In Meno, 87d, 89c, Plato clarifies that knowledge and virtue are intertwined, asserting that true virtue cannot exist without knowledge and virtue. One cannot reach eudaimonia without virtue. Similarly, the Republic, Rep. 354a, 357a, explores how justice and the cardinal virtues bring harmony to the soul, which is necessary for a life of fulfillment. Reading these works in conjunction with our lecture will allow you to engage more deeply with Plato's claim that knowledge is not just an intellectual pursuit, but a practical guide for living virtuously. Without grounding yourself in these primary texts, you risk missing the full richness of Plato's ideas. Plato's vision of eudaimonia is not simple. It's a lifelong journey requiring the cultivation of virtues like wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. To understand this journey, please make time to revisit these dialogues. Doing so will help you grasp the fundamental link between knowledge and virtue, an essential connection for anyone seeking a flourishing life. Lecture 17, Virtue and Knowledge, the Path to Eudaimonia. Good day, everyone. Today, we delve into a fundamental aspect of Platonic philosophy, the intricate relationship between virtue and knowledge, and how this connection lays the groundwork for pursuing a flourishing life, or eudaimonia. The concept of eudaimonia can be loosely translated as human flourishing, or the good life. For Plato, achieving this requires understanding the symbiosis between knowledge and virtue. Our journey today will explore how Plato weaves these two ideas together, positing that without knowledge, true virtue is impossible. Without virtue, one cannot achieve the highest form of happiness, eudaimonia. Defining eudaimonia. To begin, let's clarify what Plato means by eudaimonia. In dialogues such as the Republic and Meno, Plato frequently emphasizes that happiness is not merely the accumulation of pleasures or external goods, but rather a deep and abiding state of well-being tied to a virtuous life. In the Republic, Socrates converses with his interlocutors about justice, concluding that the just life is the happiest life, Rep. 354a, 357a. As we will see, justice is one of the cardinal virtues that leads to a harmonious soul, which is the essence of flourishing. For Plato, eudaimonia is the end goal of human existence. It is achieved when one lives by reason and wisdom. However, achieving eudaimonia is not a simple task. It requires the cultivation of virtues, such as wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, which are not inherent, but must be learned and practiced. As Socrates often highlights in his dialogues, virtue is deeply intertwined with knowledge. To be virtuous, one must know what virtue is. To truly know, one must practice what one knows, manifesting that knowledge through virtuous actions. Meno 87d, 89c. The role of knowledge in virtue. Plato's vision of the relationship between virtue and knowledge is most clearly articulated in the dialogue Meno. Here, Socrates argues that knowledge is not simply a matter of learning facts, but is directly linked to living a virtuous life. In a famous passage, he asks Meno whether virtue can be taught, implying that virtue is something to be learned, much like any other skill. Meno 70a, 71b. Socrates' response indicates that virtue is closely connected to knowledge, specifically, knowledge of the good. This is not merely intellectual understanding, but a deeper, practical knowledge that guides one's actions. In Meno, Socrates provides an example that virtue comes from understanding what is good and just, and not merely acting based on belief or custom. Meno 96d, 98a. The idea is that if one truly knows the good, they will act in accordance with it, because no one willingly does wrong if they know what is right. This is why Plato places such a high value on education, as it is through learning that one comes to know the good, and thus can act virtuously. Knowledge, for Plato, is not only theoretical, but practical. In the Phaedo, he expands on this idea by discussing the philosopher's path to knowledge as one of purification of the soul. Through the pursuit of wisdom, one aligns their soul with the eternal truths of the forms, among which the form of the good holds the highest place. Phaedo 65e, 67a. Knowing the good is to know how to live, and living according to this knowledge is what makes life virtuous and ultimately fulfilling. Virtue as a path to eudaimonia. How, then, does virtue lead us to eudaimonia? In Plato's view, virtues are not just moral qualities, but states of being that harmonize the soul. As discussed in the Republic, the soul is divided into three parts: the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive. Rep 435b, 441c. Virtue is achieved when the rational part of the soul governs the other two, creating inner harmony. This harmony is akin to health for the soul, and just as a healthy body functions well, a virtuous soul functions in alignment with reason and wisdom, leading to a flourishing life. Justice, as the virtue that governs the harmonious soul, is crucial for achieving eudaimonia. It ensures that each part of the soul performs its proper function without interference from the others. When the rational part leads, one acts according to knowledge and wisdom, making virtuous choices that are aligned with the good. Rep 442c. Plato's analogy of the soul to a city illustrates that just as a well-ordered city is peaceful and prosperous, a well-ordered soul is flourishing and fulfilled. The other cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, and temperance, support this harmony. Wisdom guides the rational part, courage bolsters the spirited part in defending reason's rule, and temperance moderates the appetites, ensuring they do not overtake reason. Rep 441e, 442. When these virtues are in balance, one is equipped to pursue eudaimonia, not as an external goal, but as an intrinsic state of well-being. The knowledge of the good. A key component of Plato's philosophy is the idea of the form of the good. This concept is most famously discussed in the Republic's allegory of the cave, Rep 514a, 520a. Here, Plato illustrates that knowledge of the good is the highest form of knowledge, and it is this knowledge that enables one to live a virtuous life. The form of the good illuminates all other forms, just as the sun illuminates the physical world, allowing one to see and understand what is truly real. Without knowledge of the good, one's actions are misguided, as they are based on ignorance or false beliefs. In contrast, those who grasp the good can see reality as it truly is and align their lives accordingly. In this way, knowledge of the good becomes the foundation for virtue and eudaimonia. As Socrates argues, knowing the good leads to right action, because once we truly understand what is good, we are compelled to pursue it. Repter 518c, 5119d. The unity of virtue and knowledge. One of the central claims Plato makes, through Socrates, is that virtue and knowledge are one and the same. This claim is rooted in his belief that all virtues are forms of knowledge. For example, wisdom is knowledge of the good, courage is knowledge of what is to be feared, and temperance is knowledge of how to moderate desires. Prater 349a, 351b. Each virtue, in Plato's system, is an expression of a particular kind of knowledge, and living a virtuous life requires the cultivation of these forms of knowledge. Plato's view that virtue is knowledge leads him to conclude that no one willingly does wrong. When someone acts unjustly or foolishly, it is because they are ignorant of the good or have been misled by false beliefs. Repture 379c, 380c. This idea is further explored in Protagoras, where Socrates argues against the notion that people can know the right thing to do and yet fail to do it. Instead, wrongdoing arises from a lack of knowledge, or as Socrates would say, from ignorance. Prater 352c, 354e. The pursuit of eudaimonia through philosophical inquiry. Given the importance of knowledge for virtue, Plato emphasizes that the pursuit of eudaimonia is also the pursuit of philosophical inquiry. In dialogues like the Apology and Phaedrus, Socrates embodies the life of a philosopher who seeks knowledge through questioning and examining life. Apollo 38a, 39b. His famous declaration that the unexamined life is not worth living, Apollo 38a, underscores the idea that without knowledge of the good, one cannot live a truly fulfilling life. The pursuit of knowledge for Plato is a lifelong endeavor. It requires constant questioning, reflection, and openness to learning. As Socrates demonstrates throughout the dialogues, true wisdom comes from recognizing one's own ignorance and remaining committed to the search for truth. In Phaedrus, this search for truth is presented as a kind of divine madness, a passionate yearning for the good that drives the philosopher to seek ever deeper understanding. Phaedrus 249-251a. Philosophical inquiry, therefore, is not just an intellectual exercise, but a way of life. By engaging in dialogue and examining one's beliefs, the philosopher comes to know the good, and through this knowledge, cultivates the virtues necessary for eudaimonia. Conclusion: the path to eudaimonia. In conclusion, Plato's vision of eudaimonia is inextricably tied to the relationship between virtue and knowledge. To live a flourishing life, one must cultivate the virtues that lead to inner harmony, and these virtues are founded on knowledge of the good. Virtue is not merely a matter of habit or custom, but a form of wisdom that guides one's actions and brings about a state of well-being. The pursuit of eudaimonia, then, is the pursuit of knowledge, and it is through philosophical inquiry that we come to know the good and live in accordance with it. As we continue our exploration of Platonic thought, I encourage you to reflect on the ways in which knowledge and virtue are intertwined in your own lives. How do you understand the good, and how does this understanding guide your actions? In what ways can philosophical inquiry help you cultivate the virtues necessary for a flourishing life? The path to eudaimonia is not easy, but as Plato shows us, it is the most worthwhile endeavor we can undertake. By seeking knowledge and living virtuously, we can achieve the highest form of happiness, the true flourishing of the soul.